Hi, and welcome to The Curling Show, the podcast that brings you interviews with the sport's top athletes and the people who shape the game. I'm Dean Gemmel, and in this edition, recorded last week, we talked to Dwayne Fowler a few days after his Quebec team was a surprise winner at the Asham World Curling Tour stop in Brantford, Ontario. Winner of last weekend's biggest Asham World Curling Tour prize, the Tim Hortons Invitational Curling Classic in Brantford, Ontario. Dwayne Fowler, welcome to the Curling Show.
Thank you very much, Dean.
Now, it was pretty much an Eastern Canada affair last weekend, but this was one of the strongest bonspiel fields we'll see east of Winnipeg this year. Brad Gushue, Jean-Michel Menard, Wayne Middaugh, and fresh from a win in Manitoba, Glenn Howard was there, along with pretty much all the other top teams from Ontario. What were your realistic expectations going in?
Well, realistically, because this was only our second spiel together as a team, our expectations weren't necessarily that high. But of course, going into something like this, you're hoping that you can manage your way to a quarterfinal and get in the money. And once you're there, anything can happen, of course. But given the level of competition, we weren't being unrealistic in saying that we think we're going to win this thing. But anything that, of course, you enter into, if you don't feel you can win it, you shouldn't be there. Obviously, things worked out well for us, and we came home with the big prize.
You know, you didn't exactly take an easy route either. You lost your first game to Wayne Middaugh after giving back a 4-up lead. Then you beat Brady Clark from the U.S. Then you lost your old teammate Guy Hemmings. Yep. And then you did the Death March through the Sea event, beating Bob Turcotte, Greg Balsden, one of the hotter Ontario teams. Then you qualified by beating Pat Ferris, and then you faced the young Canadian mixed champ John Epping in the quarters, then knocked off Glenn Howard in the semi, and finally Brad Gushue in the final. About when during this spiel with this new team did you guys get in the zone?
Well, actually, from game one, we played well. We were up, as you mentioned, 4 on Wayne Middaugh, and we were having a relatively good game, and give up a 4 to Wayne, but those guys are always tough to beat. They played great after getting down early. So there wasn't really any particular moment that I could say that we felt we could not necessarily win, but at least get into the quarters. I think it was a progressive thing. Because we're a new team, we were looking just to gel. And even though we'd come off a week where we had some poor results, the chemistry was there. We never doubted ourselves. I would say after bouncing back in the game against Geese, I think at that point we realized that, look, if we put another couple good games together, the playoffs are not that far away. So if there was a particular moment, I couldn't say, but I would say Game 4 is the game against Balsden where we probably realized we're playing well enough that we can be there on Sunday.
So is this a brand new team, or is this a sort of a reconfigured team?
It's a brand new team. In fact, it only came together first week of October, I would say, second week of October. And the funny part about it is we really weren't supposed to be in Brantford. We were on the waiting list. And
you're like John Daly winning the PGA as an alternate.
So it's funny how things work. We weren't even supposed to be there. We were originally supposed to be in Utica, New York, and the spiel got canceled. And
right.
We were on the waiting list in Brantford and got the call to go. And when we looked at the field that was there, we were saying, well, are we jumping into too big a pool this early in our team experience? But as individuals, we all believed in ourselves. We all have a lot of experience and so on. I have to obviously say I'm extremely proud of each individual on the team because to have come together that quickly, I've never seen that before, at least in my curling experience. But
it's too bad more of the coverage didn't pick up on that. I mean, you guys slipped in as an alternate, and you just formed the team in October. It would have been a nice story that didn't really come out in any of the the sports coverage of the event.
Well, and I think that obviously has a lot to do with the fact that Brad Gushue was there too,
Gushue getting all the headlines. Jeez.
Absolutely, and well deserved.
Yeah.
I mean, at no point, even after we won, at no point did I feel that we weren't getting our fair due.
Right.
I mean,
for the event, having Gushue in it was a big deal.
Absolutely, and you could feel it in the crowd and so on too. They cheered a lot for Brad, and obviously a little less so for us. But at no time did we take that as a negative against us. I mean, I think people obviously are there to see Brad. They're there to see Glenn Howard and so on, and maybe there was some disappointment
when Dwayne Fowler pops up.
When we beat Glenn in the semi, and because you're expecting Glenn Howard and Brad Gushue final, which obviously would have been a real headliner for sure. So I don't know, but at the same time, I think we played well enough to be there, and as you mentioned to start the show, we didn't take the easiest route.
No, you didn't. I mean, you beat good teams to get there. So
absolutely.
all credit to you. And I think, maybe they wanted the Howard Gushue matchup. I mean, I think there's great things about a Cinderella story coming out of nowhere, so that's good to see. Hey, from the coverage of the final, it sounds like you kept your team in the game early, and then you guys got a steal of 5 in the 7th. How did that steal happen?
I guess it's one of those things that sort of creeps up on you to a certain degree when you're on the other side of it. I think after taking a deuce in 6, a deuce that, as you mentioned, I basically had to do it somewhat on my own. But that being said, in the 7th end, the team, I think, smelled, if you want to call it that, smelled blood. They felt after the 6th end that, wow, we're, it's a 4-4 game. Let's make some shots. We're only 4 ends away of potentially winning this thing. And the team made everything. When Brad came to throw his first, he tried a triple, a really tough triple. Whether it was there or not, I'm not sure, but ultimately still left a lot of rocks in play.
We didn't move anything out with the triple, did he?
I don't know if he moved anything out. He moved things around.
Right.
And still didn't leave himself with that favorable looking house. And I came down with my last one, capped shot rock, I think it was top 4, with one that was biting 8. And he really didn't have a hit because we still wouldn't have left him with shot. So he tried what on that ice was not that easy a shot because the way the ice was working really hard. He had to go through a staggered port halfway down the ice. It looked like the rock hit a flat spot. Whether the rock would have made it through that port or not, we'll never know, obviously. It was still a difficult shot that he had to try to make.
And then he ended up bumping you in for another, right?
Yeah, we were lying 4 at the time, and he had to go through a port that he's going to go through on good ice. Not that the ice wasn't good, but it wasn't constant in that spot. Some were working hard, some were staying a little straight. And unfortunately for Brad, it picked and pushed us up for a 5th instead of getting 4. So it's unfortunate.
Well, at the end of the day, like Brad said, it doesn't matter. You get some of those back, and some of them come your way. So
that's correct. That's correct.
I think the fact is it was 4-4, and you guys were lying 4, so he didn't have an easy shot. So
yeah.
Hey, if we talk, one of the things I think that's interesting on the Asham World Curling Tour so far this year is you've got Kevin Martin's team that really seems dominant, and Kerry Burtnick, the team that won 5 spiels in a row. But I think both of those teams will probably hit a rough patch at some point. What's interesting is below those two, you get a lot of parity. You just moved up 91 places on the money list with your win. But we don't see teams like, when teams like Randy Furby's aren't in every final, and Wayne Madaw seems to be struggling. Jeff Stoughton playing a little smaller schedule maybe than in the past. Then you get teams like Don Spriggs making it to a final in Portage La Prairie, Team China beating some top men's teams. It's exciting because I think it seems that below that top, it used to be below the top 3 or 4, it was pretty tough. But now it seems like any of the top 50, say, have a shot in these things. Do you think that's true?
I think it's absolutely true. And I think what it also comes down to, too, it's the year coming off the Olympics.
Good point.
So teams are starting to reconfigure themselves. Some teams that were, for the last 4 years, working really hard, perhaps whether physically or mentally, have taken a little bit of time off. I don't necessarily mean that in terms of not playing as often, but the level at which you're focused and concentrated or physically working out, I'm sure has probably changed for some of those big teams.
Right.
I mean, you look at Stoughton, for example, with John Meade taking some time off now and so on. There is going to be a bit of a change for some of those teams, and you don't expect them to necessarily be up in the 1, 2, 3 spot every weekend. They're going to be there, come the end of the season, or they're going to be there come the end of this next 4-year period working up towards the next Olympics. And I think it's a natural progression. I think a lot of the bigger teams are going through some changes. And, I mean, Kevin obviously is doing great considering he made such drastic changes to his team. I think it's a timing thing and a natural progression or a natural change that's come about to a lot of teams.
Yeah, those are good points. And, I think this is maybe the first year we've seen such a commitment to the Olympic cycle, even though from 2002 to 2006 there was something similar. I think this year, with the Turin Games, people saw what a big deal it is. I think you're seeing teams really gear for it. And you're right, some of those teams that went so hard towards the 2006 Games just may not have enough in the tank right now and might need a year to refuel.
That's right.
You've played with just about all the top players in Quebec, but maybe the wrong team at the wrong time. Have you decided it's best to try to get to the Brier on your own?
Well, for me, I'll never say I'm going to get to the Brier on my own. Because it's going to take a great effort like the guys last weekend. I'm extremely proud of the way that they played. And there were times last weekend, too, that they carried me a little bit. I had a couple of rough patches, and the way the team played, no two players played poorly at one time, so I got to give them their due, absolutely. But in terms of getting to a Brier, yeah, I mean, to say that I was on the wrong team, that's the way I have to look at it, that I was on the wrong team at the wrong time. Otherwise, you could get a complex in a hurry, because you're right, I've played with probably, if you looked at the total of Purple Hearts that I've played with over the years, together there's probably about 60 of them, and I'm still searching for my first. So it'd be easy to say that maybe there's something wrong, something with me. I'm not. I have this.
I didn't mean to imply that, Dwayne.
No, but it'd be easy for me to think it. And over the years, certainly, there's different points in time that I've thought, well, gee, we had the team that should have done it this year, and for one reason or another, we didn't make it. And when you've played the number of years I have, and with the great players that I've played with in this province, it would be easy to start thinking that way. But at no time have I ever really seriously thought that was the case. And if it means me skipping, I have no problem with that. And I think after this many years, I have enough experience. I've skipped in the past and had my relative share of success. But success at what level? I mean, success for me now is winning a provincial and then doing and representing Quebec well at a Brier. And I think with the team we have now, it's proof in the pudding that it can be done. Not to say that you're going to win that level of bonspiel every weekend, but what it has shown is that we can talk all we want and say we could do it if we played well. We have done it now, and there's no reason to think that we can't do it again.
The first time people outside of Quebec might have seen your name was last year at the Canadian Mix, where you skipped your team to an 8-3 record and finished up in third place. How valuable was that experience?
I think what it did for me is it validated, not just to others, but it validated to myself that, you can go to a national event and you can skip at that event and do well. And all week long, I did have a good week, and there was no moment at which I really stumbled. It's a confidence builder, no question, and I can see why so many teams that have gone to Briers before tend to make it back consistently thereafter, whether it's 2 out of 3 years or 3 out of 5. Once you've been there, it's such a boost.
Right.
Whether it's like now they're taking a new vitamin. There's no question that it gives you a huge amount of confidence. And
some of the mystery seems to be gone once you go once.
Exactly, because when you haven't won before, you're wondering why is it that certain teams can win, and once you have won, it's like you say, the mystique or the magic somehow disappears, and you know now that you can do it, and now other teams are shooting at you like you've been shooting at others for years. So, I think, going to the mix last year was definitely a big deal, but it was certainly, I think, winning the provincial in itself was the thing, the magic, if you want to call it that. Doing well in the national was just an extension of having proven to yourself and to your teammates and so on that you can make that last rock at a provincial to win. And when you have, the monkey on your back for a long time and haven't pulled through or for whatever reason, the monkey's off mine. And I'm looking forward now to getting to a provincial this year and hopefully being able to still be playing in March.
It's interesting that your perspective on the mix, because a lot of top skips over the years have gone in the mixed. I think Mike Harris's first national was in the mixed, apart from juniors. Mm-hmm. Jeff Stoughton, of course, won a Canadian mixed. And then, a lot of guys go in it and do well and then maybe don't go in it again because they recommit to men's. But it can be a good confidence builder.
Well, absolutely. I mean, Jean-Michel Menard did it himself.
Right.
He won the national mix. So
Mark Nichols.
Yeah. So it's a confidence booster, no question. And I think a lot for people who are skipping. They get that air of confidence. And that's the difference between, I think, a lot of players at that level. And they have the confidence in terms of being able to they think they can put the broom in the right spot and so on. But until you've actually had to throw the last rock to win that prize, if you haven't been there, it can be a big deal. So, again, having gone to the mixed, I think it takes a little bit of that pressure off. But, again, there's nothing like going to a Brier.
Right. It's just too bad the CCA sort of treats the mixed like the Forgotten War, the Korean War or something. It's the forgotten event.
Yeah.
But, well, I don't know if they do it on purpose, but it does struggle for attention right now. I mean, it's starting right now, and I haven't, there's not a whole lot of buzz about it.
I know I would love to have been there again this year. Unfortunately, just it was a time issue. But hopefully this year, good things are going to happen in men's. And I wasn't even expecting to have that big a year. With the team coming together so late in August and September, I was, on the outside looking in and wondering if, I was even going to be able to play as much as I'd hoped.
Does this win mean your team has a little heavier schedule?
Well, the unfortunate part for us was that because we did come together so late in the season, a lot of the spiels that we would like to have played in closer to home were full.
Oh, right.
There's a couple big things that coming up the next 2 weekends that we're on the outside looking in, and to play in spiels that are of any significance in terms of money means some pretty significant travel for us. But by having one last weekend, it does give us a little more flexibility. And in fact, we're looking now at heading out west in December, which wouldn't have been an opportunity for us had last weekend not happened. So
you got a bit of cash flow going.
Yeah, cash flow is certainly part of it. I mean, and also our sponsor, Moe's Deli and Bar in Point Claire. They were tickled pink.
Moe's Deli
and Bar in Point Claire.
Okay.
Johnny there, he had a great belief in us. Not a curler himself, but knows the curling world well, and
he's going to pack them in for poutine and beer.
Well, there you go. So everybody knows who Gushue is. One of the greatest things about this sport, and that I've always bragged to people about, is that what other sport could you play? Yes, we're playing it, if you want to call it the highest level, but it's still considered an amateur sport. But what sport that someone could play like we do could compete against a world champion, an Olympic champion, Canadian champion, sit down, have a few beers together, and no other sport could you do that.
It's a beautiful game.
On any particular weekend, you couldn't sit down with a Tiger Woods, you couldn't sit down with a Michael Jordan, you couldn't sit down with the great downhill skiers of the world.
And I truly believe I hope the game just continues to grow, but I don't think that's going to change completely ever.
I hope
even
not.
If the game was huge, I hope it won't, and I don't think actually realistically in our lifetime the game won't get that big. But even as it does grow, it doesn't seem to have changed dramatically.
No, it doesn't. The roots of the game are still there. Sitting down and socializing after the games is still something that exists for the most teams. There's the odd team that doesn't socialize as much, but to each his own.
That's their loss.
In general, 99% of people still sit down, have a few beers together, and you can also be sitting down and talking to the president or CEO of a major corporation, and you might be a gas station attendant. And that makes no difference.
Right, that is a beautiful thing about curling. I mean, you go in any curling club, and the membership covers all gamuts of society.
Absolutely, and again, going back to last weekend, the opportunity not just to play against Glenn and Brad, but two of the great gentlemen of the game. I've known Glenn Howard when I was going to the University of Waterloo. I won't say what year, but we met there. I've known him, not that we were always great friends or anything, but I always thought Glenn was a class act, and he still is. And Brad Gushue, what a true gentleman, and a great ambassador for not just curling but for Canada.
Yeah, there are a lot of classy guys out curling competitively, and women for that matter. I mean, I think the game does attract a certain quality of person that's good to see. All right, Dwayne, we end with the run back. I give you a topic, and you give me your thoughts on it in 1 to 3 words.
Okay.
Marco Ferraro, inventor of the Marco hack.
Great invention, and curling wouldn't be the same without it.
Moving up 91 places on the Asham World Curling Tour money list.
Oh, unbelievable, but it's easy to move up the list when you start at 0.
Guy Hemmings.
Great ambassador for the game, and still a rock star for a lot of people.
Poutine.
Great. If you haven't been to Quebec, you got to come here and try it.
Saint-Hubert ou Chalet Suisse?
Overrated.
And finally, the CCA's flap with the language police in Quebec.
We've always got a language flap here going on with somebody, so that's nothing new.
All right. Hey, good luck this rest of the season, Dwayne. It's nice to see a new face pop up on the tour. Nice to hear the story on how your team came together and played well in Brantford.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
That's Dwayne Fowler on The Curling Show. A special thanks to Laura Ross of Quebec, the most recent shopper at the Curling Show store. Unfortunately, the shipping charges to Canada are higher than I'd like, but I'm using this Cafe Press store to gauge demand for this sort of thing. And since we like brutal honesty on The Curling Show, I will say that at this point, it looks like demand is, pretty low. But the holidays are coming up, so there's still time to turn it around. Just visit thecurlingshow.com, click on the link to the store in the sidebar, and consider some Curling Show merchandise. With Cafe Press, your web transactions are safe and secure, and heck, I'll mention your name on this podcast, the most popular one in our sport. Now that's some incentive.
Feel the power!